girls, feet on the dirt and the sand, cheering loud, the pride of our land. With every goal, we rise and stand. She's the heart, she's the hand, football girl, shining the light, football girl, on the desert night.
Oh, they moved the record, but when they changed the
Yeah, Zoom.
interface, they should let. I
I
don't.
know.
I mean, I make things, and I'm thinking, how do you let people know?
Yeah, it's a struggle. It really is. And my team are technophobes, and so they're always like, "Tupo, help!" It's like, why are you calling me? Just Google it. It's fine.
Because you're the smart one.
Yeah, they always are. Any little if a piece of inconvenience, just call my name. So
Okay. Hello, Tupa. Welcome to the Football Girl podcast, where we speak to women in sport, mainly football. But today, we have another special guest who, as an ex-athlete and it's who works in sport. It's fantastic to be able to speak to you from both sides as an athlete and as somebody who dreamed of working in sport and is doing so now. So, how do I say your name in full?
yeah,
Topo
sure.
Topo
Yeah, sure.
Kigwe
Yeah, actually, yeah, you got it. Tupo Kigwe if you're very adventurous.
Mwaijumba.
Yeah, exactly. It
Okay.
rolls off the tongue. It's very simple. The people like to overcomplicate my name. Tupo Kigwe Mwaijumba. Very simple.
Uh-uh. Um, where where did your love for sport begin growing up?
That's a great question. My love for sport is a very interesting story where I love to try different things, when I was young. My parents got me involved in many extracurricular things, being young. I used to have loads of friends. We used to play loads of games, dodgeball, and all of those things. So naturally, I was very active when I was young. But really, the first time when sport became very prevalent for me was swimming. And so when I was in nursery, we had a pool not too far away from us. And so we just used to swim. And I thought, I really enjoy this. I love, being swimming, growing up in Botswana where it's naturally very hot anyway, being in Sub-Saharan Africa. Being in the pool was just, again, just refreshing in itself, but also was just great just being in the pool, being with my friends and all that kind of came with it. But only until I really got to primary school where I was really engulfed with all these different options of I could swim, I could run, I could play netball and all of these other things. And I realized actually I'm quite good at all of these things, subconsciously. And, having, I guess, a natural athlete, teachers would always pick on me to do different things. And so I guess that passion kind of stemmed from a mixture of growing up, being surrounded by, pool. Then eventually, once I got to primary school, it then just kind of exploded a lot from me. My teachers pushed me beyond what I could ever imagine. And so the love kind of stemmed from there.
At what point did you realize you wanted to be a basketball player and take this serious?
It kind of came when I moved to the UK. We moved to the UK from Botswana in 2004. And the way in which the school system here is quite different. Where back home, we pretty much were very focused on drilling and practicing and everything else. So when we came to the UK, I realized very quickly that, again, there's a whole plethora of different sports that were available. But the one that clicked for me was basketball. I came from a netball background where, again, being African, netball was one of the primary sports that are down there, and they really drill you into it. But I realized when I came here that basketball was like a lot more freer than netball. You don't have to like stop and pass the ball. Basketball you can actually dribble. And so I really enjoyed the contact side of things. It's faster up and down the court. So I thoroughly enjoyed my basketball years all the way from primary school and then, carrying on into high school. But where it really came alive for me was when I got to university in De Montfort in Leicester, where I played for the girls' basketball team called the Pit Bulls. And from there, it just exploded. We were training 3, 4 times a week, game days on a Wednesday. We were also in partnership with the Leicester Riders, the local basketball team in Leicester. So we'd occasionally, have that exposure, sort of there. And I just thoroughly enjoyed again, just being part of a community where people enjoy the sport in as much as you do. We're all encouraging each other, training outside of the other training hours that we were having, training with the boys at the same time. So we all had like a main goal, which was ultimately, winning the league at the end of that particular season. So really where it properly came alive for me was when I got to university.
Winning the Bucks League.
Yes.
Well, before even winning the Bucks League, playing point guard. Did you play point guard?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, point guard and more power forward was more my favorite, to be honest. But yeah, point guard dabbled and dabbled.
How did you play power forward at 5'3"?
There's ways around it. I enjoyed that position more than I know point guards are typically on the shorter side, but I thoroughly enjoyed being power forward. I thoroughly love that position. It was great.
I'm more thinking, how do you be power forward at 5'3", not the point guard? How are
Oh,
you?
oh, I make it happen. So, I never really throw
Okay.
anything up there. I'm just like, I like being here. So give
Inside,
me,
underneath the rim.
yeah, literally. Yeah, it was great.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's more physical. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
I loved it. Absolutely.
So you played more power forward or point guard?
Yeah, much more. Definitely. I guess again it's stemming back to my netball days where I was either playing a goal attack or a goal shooter. So I was naturally always in and around that radius all the time, and you always had to make yourself available. For anyone that knows netball, you're stuck, in that semicircle. You can't move. So it was always important for you to constantly make yourself available. So I guess that love kind of stemmed, and just transcended into basketball.
Okay, what did that teach you about leadership, playing basketball?
I enjoyed it because we all collectively had a common goal, as a team. We all knew that we had to work hard to want to win the league. And, we also had bitter rivals in Leicester University as well. And so for us as girlies at the time, we all collectively had that common goal, set in stone. We had to do this, had to train harder. And I guess in terms of from a leadership standpoint, what did it teach me? It taught me the importance of accountability because working in a team sport such as basketball, you all rely on each other to ensure that the system works. And so if one of you isn't on point, the whole system effectively breaks down. So the first point is definitely around accountability. So being able to show up for your team and be the one to ensure that your skills are on point, you're ready, well nourished, and ultimately prepared. Second thing that I would say about what it taught me about leadership is patience. Being there, you kind of, team wise, team structures always change constantly with university. Your third years leave, got juniors who will be joining you, and so you have to be very patient with your team members. You can't just be thinking everyone should be on your level automatically, and so you have to be able to drive the team towards the common goal. Anyone that's junior, level them up and just give them ultimately your time to
Mhm.
ensure again that you're not leaving them behind. You're not like, telling, oh, this person's useless. No, it's a team sport. Everyone has to be on board again, back to that whole common goal, ultimately. And the third one primarily is also being an example. I think that's also very important, is what I'd say about leadership is it's very easy, especially in a team sport, to be, very angry all the time. Why aren't you guys, almost like Michael Jordan-esque. Everyone always talks about how Michael Jordan was with the Bulls and how it's very much, very hands-on. And so it's very important for me anyway being that example of someone who you can come to if you're ever having any issues, be the team player. If you're ever needing anything else, if the team rather need stuff from you, you're just making yourself ultimately, available. And so I found myself, throughout my 3 years of just outside of court time, just being like made available, like, hey, let's just go for a shoot, let's just go for a shootout. I was quite good at like, taking free throws. So occasionally my teammates would be like, hey, can we just do like some free throws, outside of practice? Can we go for like a quick run? Outside. And I thoroughly enjoyed that. That's ultimately, why I love basketball and just being in a close-knit team and ultimately working towards that end goal was fantastic. So yeah, I definitely say those are the three things that, leadership certainly taught me, in a basketball environment.
Did you always know you wanted a career in sport after you finished uni?
The answer is no. I never knew the sports industry existed,
Oh,
interestingly. Because you always see mainstream stuff. Being in the UK, the Premier League is top league. You hear about rugby all the time, but you don't really know or understand how those industries come about and everything else. And so for me, when I got to university, I studied business management and I just thought, yeah, I'm going to work in a bank somewhere or be top of one of the top four, PwC, KPMG, whatever it was. I thought I'm going to work in a financial institution in some capacity. But it's only until when it came to my second year where there's a former lecturer of mine, his name is Mark Prescott. He was a marketing lecturer of mine. We were having these periodic catch-ups with one another, talking about career and what's happening afterwards, etc. And I remember like one afternoon, I remember just going to his office and we're just having again candid conversation. And he asked me one thing and one thing only, which was, what makes you happy? And for the first time ever, no one has ever asked me that ever before. It's always usually like, what are you doing after your career? What are you thinking about? Are you going to be a banker? This, that, and the other. People were kind of putting ideas into my mind, whereas he kind of came at it from a completely different perspective, which was, what makes you happy? I thought, ooh, this is quite profound, isn't it? And so I answered, I love sport. And he's like, well, work in it then. And I thought, sorry, stop. How does that even work? Because when you think about sport, you think about physiotherapy or nutrition. And he said, actually, no. How do you think all these sporting events come alive is because there's people who are operating behind the scenes, the business of sport. After that, mind made, locked in. And after that, I was investigating, looking at Adidas, Nike, how does this overall sports ecosystem work? And that's when everything essentially kicked off for me. And I was like, yeah, game, set, go.
How difficult was the transition mentally from being on the court to not being an athlete?
It was
It
strange. Yeah, I
affected
don't
me really
think
hard.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, no one really talks about, generally that transition from, being in university where again you're there with your peers, the court is 10, 15 minutes away from you. You can just play at any given point to coming into the working world where you now have a schedule, you have a diary, you have to make time for something that just used to be, in your backyard, metaphorically. And so, yeah, it was quite, I guess, a struggle in terms of, being able to play and now not being able to play as much, not being able to be as active and, again, being surrounded by your peers. You can just go down to your friends, accommodation 2 minutes away and say, hey, let's go shoot some hoops. Yeah, so yeah, that transition definitely, was quite a struggle for sure. But I was excited about what the next journey was going to bring. I think with everything, it has its time. All journeys have to come to an end at some point, and that was, I guess, once the reality set in, once the gown was put on, is now graduation day. It's like, okay, this is the end of a chapter, and another one is starting to, become. And so from that perspective, yeah, I was like, okay, it's game time. It's now time for a new chapter, new era, as it were, and I was thoroughly looking forward to what the journey was going to bring.
Okay, breaking. Would you like to speak about your education?
Sure.
Why did you
Would love to.
choose business management?
Yeah. Um, I guess like many similar people with my sort of background, I didn't know what I wanted to be, but I knew that I liked business. It started from high school where you're choosing your different options and you're thinking which one is safe. And at the time, for me, business was safe because it gave me a large range of options. I could go into accounting, I could be a marketeer, I could work in HR. So business was quite a well-rounded option, for me for the moment I chose it at my GCSE level. But when it kind of came to A level, it then obviously intensified in the sense of, understanding really what business is all about. But the thing that kind of struck a chord with me in particular was entrepreneurship because it's raw, it's innovative, you're coming up with creative ideas. I thoroughly, enjoyed that overall process of how ideas come about. And that's where my creative, instincts kind of, came in when it came to creative tasks like setting up a business, the business name. I did graphics in GCSE, so I was able to bring my creative flair into business, especially along the, entrepreneurial side. And so I always knew I was going to be involved in business in some capacity, in that regard. And then that kind of segued into business management at university. And that's when all these plethora of ideas, kind of came to, including entrepreneurship, which still kind of, plays an important part, to me. But I thoroughly enjoyed just the different options it gave me, the different skill sets it gave me, whether it's involving maths from accounting or marketing, where you're able to think about the three P's and everything else. So I always thought it was going to be a good set of skill sets and ideas for me, moving in future for sure.
It's four P's in marketing.
Oh, P's of
It's
marketing.
no, it's different.
Love the best.
I studied, like, yeah, what they teach you is what they teach you. So what
Yeah,
they taught me is different, you know. So
quite.
we can only know what they teach us and read
Yeah,
more about the subject. But yeah,
indeed. Yeah,
I remember
exactly.
thinking it's four P's, and then I'd go
On the
online and
contrary, it's seven P's.
yeah, I'd go online and it's five or six, and I'm like,
So
oh,
many people,
well,
yeah, there was like, oh yeah, there's these four, and there's like an additional three that you have to consider. It's like, oh,
product,
okay.
place.
Workplace price promotion. Yeah, crazy.
I forgot the other one. But
Yeah, yeah, product
uh,
based price promotion. Yes.
hold on, hold on. Let me see. Four P's
The
of
four P's of
marketing.
marketing: product, place, price, promotion.
Yeah, yeah, it's the four. You
It's
said
the four
three.
A's.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, four. Product, place, price.
promotion.
Yeah.
Product.
Okay, so how important do you think education is versus experience in the sports industry?
That is an awesome question, and I was battling with this question. Because for me and my journey, I wouldn't have been able to get to where I am without education. And so for me, that's always been the foundation level, in itself. But you also equally can't excuse experience at the same time. 'Cause that's ultimately your life. That's your bread and butter. It's you individually. So what I can say is that you do need a certain sense of foundation level understanding. If you are trying to get to certain places, you need it in a sense of it's the skills you get from university as opposed to the things that they actually teach you. Because I guess business is not lowercase technical in a sense of whether you're studying to be a doctor or an engineer where they have to be very technical. You can't go wrong, with certain things. Whereas business, I guess, is a bit more, if you like, a bit more common sensey in a certain way where you are learning certain things, but a lot of it is like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense, right? In a way. But I guess it's the additional skills you get from university that people don't actually tell you. I mean, I've interviewed a lot of graduates and those that are in undergrad, and the thing that I always ask them is not about necessarily the experience, is that they've kind of attained, whether it's working a part-time job, etc. It's what has university taught you so far? So it is time management from your assignments, it's listening skills, it's presenting. So it's all these soft skills that you get from university that really do transcend into the working world because you will have to present, you would have to communicate to your peers as well as, senior management, etc. You're having to do all of those things. So I think that education, certainly at a university level anyway, kind of gives you that benchmark, if you will, to then when you transcend into the working world, that's certainly what it felt like for me. When you start working, it's like, oh, actually, the things that I, was taught about presenting, communicating, and all of those things, I have to use them here. I have to communicate and do and use all of those soft skills that I've attained from university level, certainly across. And then once you get into the workplace, you can now really hone in on those skills because you're never going to not need them. Especially whatever level that you're going to be achieving, you're always going to need all of those skills. You have to communicate, you have to be adaptable, you have to work towards, key deadlines, etc. And so for me, I kind of found that moving from university into the working stage wasn't as daunting, if you like, because those soft skills were pretty much already there to begin with. So it's basically a mixture of both. Both to me are equally important, but education kind of plays that nice foundation element before you then level up your experience.
Well, could you imagine your job that, or what you're doing, or your ambition, or your determined? Could you imagine
Mm.
how different it would be if you didn't go to university? If you went
Yeah.
straight from high school?
I can't imagine it, to be quite honest with you. I needed those steps, to be honest. And plus, I'm a firm believer in, things happen for a reason. And had I not gone to university and had that conversation with my lecturer, Mark Prescott, I wouldn't have even thought about having a career in sport to begin with. And so it's quite hard for me to then say, oh, what would life have been if I had just gone straight into the workplace? I would have just easily could have been just clericking, working in a nursing home, or your typical whatever surrounded by my family of nurses who work in healthcare, I would have probably gone down the healthcare route, to be honest. And so my career needed that pathway of education in order to be where I am today.
I say that because in women's sport, you have people who have been athletes. They didn't go
Yeah.
to school. They just in their 20s they became semi-professional footballers,
Hmm.
or and for 10 years, 11 years, and then after they finish playing football,
Yeah.
within 2 or 3 years, they are in not only in a business organization, but a sports organization, but they're really high.
Yeah, completely.
And I spoke to somebody this week, and the discussion was about an ex-footballer who um, she retired in maybe 2014, and then by 2017 she was like the president of a sports organization, and it's like, well, like, but she has no.
Has no education. Absolutely. Yeah, I think everything always stems down to the network that you build, right? I
How
think
important
from
is that?
massively. Sport is a very interesting industry, and I'm sure you might agree, where it's one of the biggest industries in the entire world, but it's so small at the same time. It's a very weird, conundrum. So your network is very much, important and integral to that growth. Even for myself trying to get in, once you break in and once you're in, you're basically good to go. So for anyone who's a professional athlete, don't just focus on the field of play. Speak to your managers. Who else is in those behind the scenes, the operations director, because they're the ones who are running the show, right? So you're understanding, through the environments that you're in, how this whole ecosystem inevitably works. I did a short stint at the Leicester Riders basketball team where the guys, the player, I never engaged with the players at all. They were there doing their thing, playing on the courts, but I was in the back scenes of dealing with the sponsors and how things come about and understanding this is the overall ecosystem of basketball. Why did the sponsors sponsor? What are they looking at, from it from an operational standpoint? You have to be on the court, have this ready, do this, other referees ready. There's a whole ecosystem surrounding. And so, of course, your network is going to be important because you just need that one conversation that will then open up, doors, thereafter. So very much so utilize the network. So you might think it's small, but actually that one conversation can lead to another conversation, which will lead to another conversation. So yeah, networking is very pivotal.
We'll continue talk. We'll talk about the. Well, we are talking about the industry, but so I was thinking, you have two candidates,
Mm,
and one is an ex-athlete, and obviously she has she has a name in the sport, or she played the sport, but she
mm,
has no experience, as in or university education. You have another lady who has experience and technical skills, but
sure.
they so within the network of thinking which we do in the West, not only
Yeah,
do we have the class system, but you also have class and then network system. So
quite.
in terms of Europe and North America,
Hmm.
so usually the in the network system, the athlete will gain the job and the role,
Yes.
but the one who has the more technical skill doesn't,
Hmm. Hmm.
or she doesn't have the right background or her skin color, or like for example, in India, she's not from the north or the south, she's from this place. So
Hmm.
whereas in China, they're just pick it's purely based on your technical skill.
100%. Yeah.
There are some other factors, but I'm saying, because I was wondering, does that affect our output or production output as companies overall?
Mm,
Because most of our executives have come from the
that's
network
correct.
system,
Yeah.
and your father was your parents, you know who your father is, or you went to
Yeah.
this school or that school, but you're not actually more valuable or productive than
Mm-hmm.
somebody else. The past 10 people to leave XAI or Grok, they're all
Mm,
Chinese.
yeah. Yeah.
So he knows this South African who became the Elon, like he knew that, okay, I've been to school here, but if I
Yes.
need smart people. I don't need
Exactly. And your team. Absolutely. It's quite an interesting one, isn't it? I think it's quite every organization is different in terms of what its needs and objectives are in particular. I think when you're an athlete, you'll naturally have the connotations of, depending on the sport that you play, of course, but you're determined, you work hard, you arrive on time, you have a certain mindset of winning mentality. So you as an athlete, you naturally have that stereotype of you have the winning mentality, and everyone wants that in their team, naturally, of course. And then you have, as you're saying, the technical side of things. What I will say to those that are in the technical side, because I come from that environment where yes, of course, I played basketball, but I was trying to stem into the business side of things. And so, in as much as playing sport is important, it's also about the things that you're doing outside of it. And it's also important, we raised this a bit before about experience. And so, what are you doing, not just from your degree, but what else are you doing to show the fact that you are different to everybody else? Are you taking up those internships? Are you volunteering on team days? What are you doing to make yourself stand out? Because as an athlete, you stick out like a sore thumb. You won this medal, you've won this game. You automatically are in that stardom feel. Whereas if you come from a technical background and you're just relying solely on education, that's going to be a bit of a problem because there's nothing else that is said about you apart from your education. So therefore, you have to think about ways that make you different, that makes you yourself unique, that will rise you above the rest. And so don't rely solely on the technical side. Think of like, what else could I be doing whilst I'm at university? Can I be the leader of a club? Can I be part of a committee? Can I be volunteering, etc.? Because when I'm looking at CVs, that's what I'm looking at. What extracurricular activities are you doing to showcase the fact that, oh, this one has done all of these incredible things whilst they were studying? Wow, that's freaking impressive. So you always have to look at how else can you maximize your time because you're right. Just having a university degree, especially nowadays, you are going to need to do a lot more because everyone and everyone can just have a degree, have a first class, fantastic. But what else can you be doing outside of that as well to ensure that you stick out?
What does your role involve day to day?
Gosh, my day to day is very different. You know, it's very interesting my roles. I'm a project director, essentially what I am, and my role is to essentially oversee all of the projects of my organization. So we essentially are an intermediary between buyers and sellers in major sporting events. So depending on where you want my skill set, I could either help implement ideas, create ideas, or help you deliver them. So depending on where we are on that particular timeline is essentially where I feature, which is why my day-to-day life is going to be ever so different. One minute I can be planning for an event that's happening, you know, in 6 to 7 months' time for a client, or I could be in the middle of, you know, essentially delivering one. So it's understanding that overall project timeline. And so as a director, essentially your main role is to ensure that the project is number one on time, is it delivered to budget, are the team briefed up in terms of what needs to be done of them to ensure that the ultimate goal of the said project is as successful as it can be. And ultimately, once the thing is over, reflections, what went well, what didn't go well, and everything. As you can imagine, the cycle just continues for every single project, you know, in and out. So my day is always going to be completely different depending on the project it is that I'm working on for sure.
Football girls, feet on the dirt in the sand, cheering loud, the pride of our land. With every goal, we rise and stand. She's the heart, she's the hand.